Like to call this meeting
You
to
were
order.
here wicked early, I just want to say that.
Like to call this meeting to order. The Clark County Board of Education special meeting, January 17th, 6:30 at 6:31.
Oh, excuse me.
Like to welcome everyone back to the new old boardroom, so to speak. Let's stand for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance. Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I also would like to welcome Mr. Bennett as the newest member of the Board of Education. Welcome. Mr. Bennett was sworn in right before our meeting, so welcome and looking forward to working with you. Next item is review the agenda.
Probably should reference what district he's representing.
I'm sorry.
You probably should reference what district he represents since,
Mr. Bennett represents District 3.
yeah, since we had two openings.
We still have advertisement for District 4. Review of the agenda. Any questions, comments, or motion?
No,
Have a motion?
make a motion to approve the agenda.
Ms. Ritchie, we have a motion from Ms. Ritchie. You have a second?
A second.
You have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
I'll quit digging here in a minute, am I?
Do we have any public comments? I think so. More likely not.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. So next on to internal board business, and I've been instructed I need to read this statement before I turn it over to Ms. Ellis. Resolution of the Board of Education of Clark County, Kentucky, confirming the acceptance of an offer of assistance from the Kentucky School Facilities Construction Commission, authorizing and approving the execution of a participation agreement with said commission, authorizing and approving the execution of a lease agreement with Clark County School District Finance Corporation and any further necessary instruments, approving certain architect plans for the construction of certain school building projects, and approving the plan of financing the cost of said project. With that, next line item will be consider adoption of resolution for issuance of bonds. Ms. Ellis.
So you just read what we need to adopt. So I mean, that's the resolution that the board needs to adopt.
Okay.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution for the issuance of bonds.
We have a motion by Ms. Hall. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Bennett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Finance update. Consider approval of draft budget. Ms. Ellis.
I know, it's a little strange being back
Yeah.
in here. All right, so you were given a PowerPoint presentation that kind of does an overview of the budget. You were given an actual Munis printout of what the budget looks like in the system, which is similar to your monthly financial statement that you get. And then I also provided a calculation of just kind of the SEEK formula of the factors we know at this point and how, because that's one of the largest revenue sources on our general fund, along with our property tax dollars. So I was showing you how we kind of arrived at that number. So, any specific questions that you all have that we want to address? Do you want me to just briefly walk through this? What is the preference of the board?
The question I have, which has been in news a little bit, is the average daily attendance that's going to start hitting in all school districts going forward.
Yes.
Can you kind of
Yes.
review that with us?
So we, and that's why I provided this C calculation, so you could see kind of what that decrease is gonna look for us, because we are gonna show a decrease. We have been frozen at our 18-19 AADA number which was a really good year for us. And so we have benefited being frozen for the last 3 years on our SEEK funding at that number. But with COVID, as all districts have experienced, we have seen declining numbers. We have just in this year gotten our numbers back up, which is fantastic, but it's still lower than our 18-19. So we're projecting at this moment, kind of where we've looked at where AADA is falling at the moment, that we're gonna go down about 142 kids. Now, to counteract that, we actually, our December 1 counts with our exceptional children is up. Which again, most districts are seeing this pattern as well in their districts with what COVID has created and all of the situations that we're dealing with. So kind of, we were projecting a decrease of almost over 600,000 with that decrease of 142. But with SPED numbers up, we're actually falling out right at a decrease of 328,000 is what so we are projecting a decrease in SEEK. Again, this is the numbers we have to work with at this moment. Probably next month, the forecast SEEK is going to come out for next school year, which will be the first 3 months of our year. And we will see the assessment per pupil amount will change, which is once they've kind of looked at all district data, that number changes across the board. So I don't know what that number is at this moment. We do know it's going to go up to 42. Hopefully legislation keeps that number for us in the budget and nothing changes with that. But there are a lot of factors in legislation that we have to wait and see what certain decisions are made.
Is there any legislation in place that you know of to change or?
Not that I'm aware of right now,
Of the
nothing.
average daily attendance?
Mr. Howard, are you aware of anything? I don't think anything is.
Nothing official. When I went to the superintendent's conference in January, a lot of the superintendents were eager to hear from Senator Wise and Senator West, who are both on the education committee. I think a couple of things they're really looking at pushing as one is, and I'll get to your question, I'll be brief. One is looking at school security with Senate Bill 1 passing with all the requirements with resource officers, with secure vestibules. That was an unfunded mandate, and I think they're looking at possibly going back to funding at least the resource officer part. So for districts like, of course, instantly my mind goes to, we're already doing that, so how does that help us? Well, I think they're gonna try, again, getting that many legislators together and working through the making sausage part, right? But they're gonna try to also to basically say, here, we're funding it for everyone. If you're already funding it, you can recap those funds and then reallocate it to another need. So that you wouldn't just be, because most districts are doing it, it's just the smaller ones. The other thing, getting back to the question, is there are some conversations about doing a blended model, so not basing it just only on average daily attendance, because post-world, people no longer send a kid to school even if they have the sniffles, right? Before, they would give them a little medicine, there weren't as many restrictions on infectious disease, so every district, whether they were at 95 like we were, and now we're at 92, they're trying to kind of make that match, but they would have to go through the process. So I asked Ms. Ellis to give us worst case scenario based on the information we have now, knowing we are very much early into the budgeting process. But I would rather be conservative, and under promise and over deliver later.
So I'm gonna make sure I understand. So are they changing how they calculate the fund?
That is on the table, but nothing has been approved.
There's not
So
been any
that's why-
bills, there's not been anything going through. This is just in my conversations with other superintendents, with KASA, with KSBA. There's rumors that this might be something they look in because of the need.
Kind of factoring in enrollment and attendance, whereas right now it's just
Okay.
attendance based.
And with the exceptional children, is that children with IEPs, or is that how you?
I'm not gonna speak out of turn because that is not my world.
So
but
it is, so it's
essentially-
students with IEPs or they fit under some other state agency category. So for our DJJ kids, for instance, if they're removed from the home, or state agency kids, we also get additional funding. So you have your general per pupil number. Right now it's $4,100, it's supposed to go to 42, that's what she was talking about. And then you get extra on top of that to meet the needs of kids who need more. Thus, now they also, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but they also categorize your high incident disabilities, so things like ADHD, developmental delay, those kids don't need as much versus kids who have more low incidence, so they're much more rare, but they need many more supports. So that's kind of how, and again, I'm really looking forward to getting the fifth board member, and something that we're gonna propose is have some budgeting trainings and go through this, so we're all on the same page and working together in a little bit more. Again, we're not gonna be finance directors like Ms. Ellis afterwards, but I think us having a better grasp on that would be good for the board and good for our constituents.
So the only other question I have is as a review these, or review what you presented, is there anything that you would point out that the board really needs to focus on for this year?
So the bigs are, obviously our revenues are going down, but part of this projection is projecting that we will take the 4% tax rate. So that is built into this budget, so that is a consideration the board will need to think about going forward, because we are building that into the budget cycle, which is increasing, helping offset the SEEK decrease by increasing. So that's a thought going forward, to think about taxes, which come up in, August, September-ish. On the expenditure side, the big thing to think about is really our staffing. It's really huge that we have had the opportunity to have the generous staffing allocation we have had for years. And we have now had ESSER dollars to help even supplement that more. But we are getting ready to hit an ESSER cliff. Next year is the last year we are going to have those dollars from the federal government. And it's spend it or lose it. So, we have plans in place to spend what the government has given us, but we only have one more year to do so. So we do need to forward think. All of those positions have to come back to general fund, and our general fund cannot afford them. We've got to look at, unfortunately, letting some of those positions go based on where our enrollment numbers sit. And as I just, we just had the conversation, those numbers are down. We've continued to keep the same level of staff for the last 3 years, even though numbers have decreased. We've not decreased staff. In fact, we've actually added staff with all the grant funding we've had. So that is the major expenditure side, especially on general fund, is we've got to look at pulling those positions back to match really where our ADP and enrollment is sitting.
And I know it's early in the year, but when do you think when do you think the board will be able to start working on staff allocation or get a recommendation?
Sure, so I have already met with every head principal. I did that last week just so that they saw the same numbers, and they're in the process on what that would look like. We have not looked at exceptional children numbers yet. I've got a meeting with Ms. Mann and Mr. Powell, so as soon as I get that meeting and I hear back from the principals, because I also want them to have some ownership and say in what programs they need versus what we've always funded everything. And so once I get those recommendations back, I'll be able to share with you probably by mid-February. We have to get those allocations to site-based by March.
First, so at the February board meeting, you will be presenting the tentative staffing allocation for next year, which has to be given to the councils by March 1st. So
Okay.
you will get that at the February meeting.
So if there's possible affected employees, they maybe get a heads up that it could happen. Okay. Because I think we know that, a few of us though, we kind of, I don't want to say kicked the can down the road a little bit, but wasn't ready to cut staff allocations
Right.
just yet. So,
And having
and we
the funding
know,
of the ESSER
Yeah.
allowed us to not have to do that yet, but we are kind of to that point, it's time
Yeah.
now.
And the other piece of that, when I met with the head principals, we also looked at their grant monies they have. So although we might be pulling our allocation back, most of them have planned to use what was given to them instead of carrying it over to take them through next year. And again, that's something I was kind of pushing my colleagues to last year as head principal, and then most of them kind of did the same thing, had the same thing. And so they know exactly how much extra they have, how much Title I they have to carry over. They'll get Title I next year also, they just won't get any more school ESSER monies.
okay.
So our principals have been very diligent and
We've
Kind
never
of
got,
planning
we've never
ahead.
got this fast, I'll tell you
Yeah.
that, as former principal in the district, ever
Yeah, I
gotten
mean,
it this fast.
they kind of saw it coming. I think a lot of us have seen this is on the horizon, so that they've been planning for it, so that their buildings don't feel the full effect of that cut next year. They can kind
Okay.
of spread it out maybe over a 2-year period.
I like that plan better.
Yeah.
Well, is there any possibility of attrition at all?
A lot of them will take care of themselves in that, and honestly, the last couple of years, attrition would have taken care of some of this had we not said you get to keep the position and then they rehire it back. It really, so it will. We've already, in the meetings, they already said, oh, we know it's gonna retire. Well, that kind of already took care of a couple spots, and then it's like, oh, we know this person wants to move here. So they were already kind of talking that out last week in the meeting. So yes, attrition will take care of some of that, absolutely. So that's really the major gist of Fund One, what we just kind of walked through. I mean, there's a little more details in here for you, but that's really the overview, big picture of Fund One, or our general fund. So the next funds at this budget cycle that we budget in the draft budget are our food service, and they are projecting upwards because we're back in school, full session. They're selling meals, they're getting that count of giving that meal to the child, which is where they get their monies from. So those meal counts are up, their dollars are flowing in. So her budget is showing an increase of a little over $1 million projected next year, which is fantastic news for them. They're recouping those losses from COVID. Fund 310 and 320 are based on our property dollars. We have 2 nickels here in the district. It's based on ADA. So you are gonna see, when you look at the budget picture, you're seeing one side go up because property is going up, but you're gonna see one side go down because ADA is going down. But overall, we still are generating enough capital funds to, which cover our debt service, our Fund 400, and then obviously you just approved a bond for future. But all of that, the bonding capacity and all that has been looked at extensively by Compass. We are still within our means to be able to fund what we have and sell a future bond for the preschool. So that is kind of the nutshell. The future considerations of the budget is we are still working on the wage study. We have a couple more groups that we're working on that we hope to have those recommendations to you before the end of the year to start the new school year with, which is also part of the consideration on general fund budget is you've got to kind of prepare your staff back to be able to have higher salaries. Obviously, we just talked about updated adjusted staffing allocations. You'll see those next month. We talked about enrollment, SEEK funding, legislation. We're waiting to see what they do decision-wise. What actual PBA falls out at. You can see the projection that was provided to you. Tax rates, we'll decide those in September, August, depending on how the reports fall out. Most of the time, we're end of August, 1st of September. Again, I mentioned the biggest thing is the ESSER Cliff coming with that grant. That's the biggest thing. And then if at this point going forward between January draft budget and May tentative is departmental needs that might pop up in conversations. We have more extensive conversations than that we had right now at this budgeting cycle. So those are the next things. I've listed the next steps date-wise of what's to come. But other than that, I was required to provide a budget for you. It's not necessarily a approval, but it had to be provided to you by January 31st, a draft budget. So.
So the recommended motion is to, the board has reviewed the 2023-24 year draft budget.
Yes, sir.
So I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
One second.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion by Ms. Ritchie to adjourn. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Hall. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. We are adjourned at 6:50 PM. We do have another meeting, the Finance Committee, starting in 10 minutes. So, real quick, just,
Oh, okay. All right. Actually, during the recess, could I borrow everybody for just 2 or 3 minutes?
sure.
I'll take
Order this Clark County Board of Education special meeting, Finance Corporation, January 17th at 7:02. First line item is confirm corporation officers.
So what we're looking for here is a motion to confirm corporation officers. The way we have it written up would be Bill Talby as the president, Ashley Ritchie vice president, based on your roles on the board currently, which is why we couldn't do it previously, because we pushed off the organizational meeting. So myself, Dustin Howard as secretary, Alicia Ellis as the treasurer, and then Dora Hall as a member. We have not put Mr. Bennett on there because of the time, with it being a special call meeting, he'd not been sworn in. But that's something we can go back and obviously put him on there at that time if we needed to.
Okay.
You can go ahead and add him tonight, we just didn't have it written down because we didn't know name.
Okay, so then we would also add,
Since he has been-
how, do you want to be referred to as Billy Bennett officially?
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Billy Bennett would also be a member then, that's what we would, thank you, Ms. Ellis.
So do I have any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to confirm the corporation officers as described by Superintendent Howard.
I have a motion by Ms. Hall. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ritchie. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Consider adopting resolution for the issuance of the bonds. I will read the resolution. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Clark County School District Finance Corporation relating to and providing for the issuance of not to exceed $24.5 million in principal amount, subject to a decrease in an amount determined by the board to be in the best interest of the corporation, of school building revenue bonds in accordance with section 58.180 and 162.120 through 162.300 and 162.385 of the Kentucky Revised Statutes to provide funds for school building purposes, providing and determining the duty of said corporation in connection with the operation of the school property, the creation of the funds sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on said revenue bonds as when they mature, the creation of adequate maintenance and insurance funds, and authorizing the execution of a lease of such foregoing property to the Board of Education of Clark County, Kentucky. Any questions on that? Discussion?
No. I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution for the insurance of bonds.
Motion by Ms. Ritchie,
Second.
second by Mr. Bennett. All in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Mr. Ritchie makes a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Hall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 4-0. We are adjourned at 7:06 PM.